Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing joebobpop in a 15-minute game on ICC, the Internet Chess Club, the very first site that I ever recorded YouTube videos on. And we're back. It's still around. I've actually been streaming on here a bit lately. I hope my opponent is here because he's got a nice rating, 2242. This is 15 second with no increment. So cutthroat. I mean, when it comes down to it, he wants to abort. No, okay, he's going to play a move. But yeah, when it comes down to it, no increment, you got to make quicker decisions in the opening and early middle game. If you play those time controls, whether it's 10-minute, 15-minute, even blitz time controls, 5-minute, 3-minute, whatever. So you got to front load the time management, meaning you have to make an effort to play fast at the outset of the game because that time isn't coming back once it starts burning off your clock. So I'm already happy that I'm up a little bit of time here. So e3, passive move on move 2. I'm just going to play knight f6. I like going for c5 in general in these types of positions, so I think I will do that. I'm not afraid if white takes. I can get the pawn back with queen a5 check if I want to. I can also play e6, and on b4 start undermining a5. So it looks like white is going for perhaps a Colle system, Cole system, perhaps you might know it as. We'll see what happens. Yeah, ICC has a nice clean interface. It's just not a very popular site anymore, is the thing. But this was the site that I first cut my teeth on, the real chess world, let's say, in finding strong competition, because I played on here a lot in the late 90s and early 2000s when I was coming up in the chess world. So I like to trade here. I figure this bishop is bound for b2, so it makes sense to make that swap and not give white a chance to play d takes c5 or some other way to maybe complicate things. Now, will I play bishop g4, bishop f5? Both are completely fine. I think I'm going to go bishop g4 and go for the pin, just to frustrate a knight e5 attempt. I'm just looking for harmonious development here. e6, bishop d6, castles, nothing fancy. Hope you guys are all doing well. Okay, h3. Maybe now I'll play bishop f5, now that white's already played bishop e2 and somewhat committed to their development scheme. Could also play bishop h5. But yeah, I think I'll go here. I don't mind knight h4 in these structures. Bishop g6 would be okay. I don't think the bishop pair is that big of an advantage for white, if at all. And also on knight h4, I might play bishop e4, which is an idea you see in the Slow Slav, if you've watched some of my videos in that opening. But okay, white castles, fair enough. Bishop d6 or bishop e7, kind of a minor decision. I'm actually somewhat leaning towards bishop e7. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. d6 looks a little more active. Certainly you have the h2 b8 diagonal there, but I have a feeling white's probably going to go for c4 in the near future, so would not be surprised to see knight bd2 and c4. And in that case, if I ever want to play d takes c4 and give white the so-called hanging pawn structure with pawns on d4, c4, I like that my bishop is back here because I'll have some pressure on d4, more so than I would if the bishop were on d6. So that's why I'm putting it on e7. But it's probably just a matter of opinion as to what is best there. So can't go wrong with either. So castles. Let's see what white does with this knight, whether it's going to c3 or d2. It's going to c3. Okay, so I could take, if white had played c5 on the previous move, by the way, b6 might have been a good reply, just undermining. So I could take rook c8 as another candidate move. Looks pretty good. h6 if I want to tuck that bishop away. I give white the option of taking on d5 if I play h6, so there's just that to consider. Yeah, I don't think I should be worried about knight h4. I mean, I might even have d takes c4 if white opts to do that. Let's play rook c8. Good spot for the rook here. I'll keep d takes c4 on the back burner for now. I'm recording this pretty late at night. It's 10:45 p.m. Old school recording session. Recording in the evening. Late in the evening. I cleared about 250 gigs of videos from my hard drive in the past couple days. Just YouTube videos and streams I've had. Just take up a huge amount of space. Feels good. I hope my computer appreciates that little spring cleaning. I have been streaming quite a bit on Twitch lately, so if you're interested in watching me play live sometime and you've only been used to me through YouTube, do check out my Twitch channel. In fact, tomorrow, which is Tuesday, April 28th, I'll likely be playing Titled Tuesday on chess.com. So I'll be streaming for about 2 hours for that. All right, so I have a 2-minute time edge at this point. Rook c1, so white's just mirroring me. And I might go for the capture here. Maybe capture and knight a5. That would be a traditional way to pressure this pawn. White could play knight e5. I could also just bide my time. I mean, again, there's probably no rush. h6 type move is useful here. Where to put the queen as well. I could take and play queen a5. Although I think white's going to put their queen on b3. I have a feeling. So let's play h6. I want to throw the ball back at white and see what they do. Just a helpful move. Get rid of back rank problems, be able to drop the bishop back if I want. Although again, I don't think knight h4 was that big of a deal because I could play d takes c4 and the d4 pawn was in trouble. Let's just see what white does here. If I can get white to release the tension or commit to something, maybe it's in my best interest. Although perhaps now c5 makes more sense because on b6 white does have knight a4. Still though, the pawn is not coming up to b4, so maybe I could play knight e4, although then there's bishop a6. Okay, things could get interesting there. But just based on the tempo white is playing this game, I think getting them to make a move in a tense position here probably plays to my advantage with the nearly 2.5 minute time edge. So I'm just going to spend a little time thinking about c5. c5, b6, knight a4. I could take c5. Okay, white plays bishop d3. All right, so now trading and taking on c4 is again something I'm strongly considering because white's queen could be on a poor square. Another candidate move here, good to have options right from the jump, is knight e4. Just send in the knight. It's not very well supported, but something to think about. If I take on c4, white takes on f5. Don't like that as much. So I think I'll probably take and then take c4. It releases some of the tension, but looks like a good way to play. Queen a5 maybe after that. Yeah, let's go for that. Okay. White shouldn't be spending any time here. Queen takes d3, absolutely. The only reasonable move to consider. C takes d5 isn't going to work for white. Bishop takes f1. Okay, so yeah, I was thinking take, and queen a5. Knight b4 would be nice. Let's take first. But on b takes c4, knight b4, white does have queen e2, and that pawn is defended. So I'm liking the queen a5 option. One thing you always have to consider in these structures is if your opponent plays d5. So whether I play queen a5 or if I decide on something like queen b6, which also, now that I look at it, is kind of tempting. That bishop is loose. I want to be looking at d5 in various forms. Maybe queen b6. Because I'm seeing now, if I can go queen b6, queen a6, there's some unpleasant pressure here. Let's try that. I'm calling an audible here, changing up my strategy, but queen b6 looks kind of irritating. I want to target both c4 and d4, this hanging pawn structure. So, yeah, I think shifting the queen over, ideally in conjunction with knight b4, may give white some serious issues here. Hey, I'm drinking tea tonight, guys. It's some herbal tea. I believe it's honey chamomile, something like that. I've never had this tea before. It's not bad. But I don't know about you guys, but my coffee intake has gone up. It was high to begin with, but it has gone up now that we've been in lockdown for the past month and a half. But I've been more productive than ever, too. Staying busy every day, working 7 days a week. And coffee's been fueling me. Okay, bishop a1. Yeah, so definitely thinking about queen a6, which makes even more sense now that rook b1 could be on the docket. Should I fear d5? I feel like probably not. Yeah, I think this pin, I'm just going to make this move, because this pin, queen on queen, I'm trusting that the tactics mostly favor me here. Not that white's going to lose something, but it just looks nice at a glance for me, so let's play it and see what happens. I maybe could have played knight b4 first and then queen a6, but I wasn't going to pause and consider that move order nuance. Don't think it's important enough yet. So this is a potential dilemma with the hanging pawns. They occupy a lot of central territory, and you almost always see this structure with c or d pawns on d4, c4 if it's white, or d5, c5 if it's black. These pawns can be strong, but they can also be subject to attack. And if they get blockaded and hit multiple times, they can drop off and the position can crumble. So that's what I'm trying to prove here as black. Shout out to The Hanging Pawns, by the way. So Hanging Pawns is a Croatian YouTuber. He is, I believe, about 1900 FIDE. He's documenting his chess improvement journey on his YouTube channel, and he has a fantastic channel. I highly recommend you go check it out. He is committed to becoming a master and even a grandmaster is what he aspires to be someday. And I believe he's in his late 20s, so it's really inspiring to see someone have that kind of dedication, and he posts excellent videos. So do go check him out. And best wishes to Hanging Pawns, or Stjepan as his name is. All right, so I got white thinking. This is great. He's going to be under 5 minutes soon. This is good training for me for my match this Thursday, April 30th, by the way. As long as there's a little bit of lull in the play here. I'm playing in a tournament on chess.com called I Am Not a GM. It's all international masters, and I'm in the second round. I'm playing Lawrence Trent. Okay, knight b5. Knight b4 was my immediate reaction to this move because I'm going to win the a pawn. Maybe the a7 pawn is loose at the end of that line, though. That's probably what he's going to claim. So knight b4, where does he put his queen, though? That's something he has to consider. So let's play it and make him consider it. Knight a5 might have been playable too, looking for knight takes c4. But I didn't like that he could play c5 there. It did cross my mind very briefly, though. So knight a5, typical way to hit that pawn on c4. But yeah, c5 looked a little awkward. So let's play this critical move here and see what he does. Say he plays queen e2. I think I could take on a2 either way at that point. He plays queen b3. Okay. So there I was thinking take with the queen, because after the trade I'm going to be hitting the rook. And it feels like in the end I should be able to save this pawn, because Queen takes a2. If we get a swap and he takes on a7, I have rook a8. I'm going to win something there. Yeah, this seems to check out. I think that pawn is mine. Because I can get the knight back out, and I'm anchored by this bishop on e7. It's another nice thing about having the bishop here versus d6. So a knight b5 move wasn't hitting the bishop. Can't say I planned that, but side benefit. Yeah, this is looking very good. So if there's a trade on a2, rook c2 attacks my knight, but knight b4, I gain a tempo, I hit the rook, and then I can play a6, assuming the rook moves somewhere. And that's an extra pawn. Also c4 may be lost for white after that too, because knight c3, rook takes c4. So, and if white loses c4, and with this time situation, I think the game is basically going to be over. Yeah, I don't even see a way he can really complicate the game. He could try to avoid the queen trade, but that would be kind of antithetical to queen b3 on the last move. I assume his idea was to trade and play rook c2, but he probably just now noticing knight b4 and, well, okay, you can eat my words. He plays queen e3. And a3, again, the move that comes, or a6 rather, again, the move that comes to mind here. Just scanning to see if my queen is somehow going to get trapped, but I don't think so. I like a3 a lot because c4 is just bound to fall. Unless he plays knight a3. He could play knight a3, which also, to be fair, does slam the door on my queen. So let's think. I can also play rook takes c4, but he can swap and take on a7, although his knight is awfully far from home, isn't it? Okay, so maybe rook takes c4 is the top dog move here. Yeah, if he takes a7 first, I trade on c1 and then take the knight. So yeah, I think this is probably working. Knight c3, queen a6, or queen a5 even. Looking for backwards knight moves or knight moves in general that could hurt me, because you guys know that I miss those, but not saying anything here for white. Plays knight c3, okay. Backward knight move, but nothing to fear. Queen a5. I feel like he's probably going to go for d5 and just swing for the fences soon. Because now his hanging pawn structure has been converted to a isolated pawn structure. So he's almost obliged to just try to go for something. I think I'm going to play queen a6 again. Just keep everything defended. Overprotect. Yeah, and here I can retreat the rook. Maybe knight d5. Just to stabilize and try to swap stuff. Just got to contain his activity now. So knight d5. Rook c7 also looks just fine, although the rook is undefended there, so beware. But is there anything wrong with rook c7? Rook c7, knight e4, I can deal with that stuff easily, I think. Rook c7, knight e4, knight b, d5, let's say. Yeah, let's go for this. Okay, he could move his queen, queen f4, queen g3 maybe, but I think as soon as I double up, there's not enough pressure here probably to to lead to anything for white. So trying to keep c8 open for the other rook. Does play knight e4. Okay. So I mentioned knight bd5 here. Also maybe knight c2, a little bit looser of a move. I like knight bd5. Just at a glance, though, it seems very sturdy. Yeah, knight takes f6 I can take with the bishop. So I'm going to go for that. Blocking d5. Useful here. Okay, let's take. It means his bishop is not getting in the game on this diagonal. Queen f3. Now probably just double. Double up the rooks. A little bit of pressure on f7, but nothing that's going to work out for him, I think. Yeah, let's double up. Double up on the bubble up, as Ben Feingold says. Not much to do for white. Just very little counterplay here. The king is safe. No pawn breaks. Bishop on a1. Looking sad. So let's just keep playing some solid moves and convert this. Okay, bishop b2. Kind of a weird move. Queen a2 comes to mind. Just looks like a no-nonsense invasion. I could take his outpost and knight at any point, but I don't see a reason to right now. Gives the bishop a little bit more scope. I like the look of queen a2 because bishop a3 runs into rook c3, and I'm winning a piece. So is he really going to play bishop c1? Is that the point? It'd be kind of a funny maneuver, but it could be the idea. Probably is the idea. Bishop c1. I'd like to get these pawns going long term, but I need to get my queen out of the way first. Another move that comes to mind here is queen b6. So attacking the bishop, also eyeing up that pawn. Then on bishop c1, I can play queen takes d4 safely. Kind of like that. If the bishop goes back to a1, I don't mind. Queen could come over to a3, but that looks wrong. So let's do it. If rook b1, he puts himself in a pin. I can play knight c3, for example. Yeah, bishop a3 is still running into rook c3. And then if queen h5 attacking f7, I can take e5. Okay, so queen back here. Gives me knight f4 perhaps in some cases. Queen b3 looks pretty good here. Again, though, bishop c1 maybe something white will go for. Could take e5, might not be a bad time to do it. Take and then queen b3. Start pushing pawns. He's getting awfully low on time at this point. But still, let's try to be accurate here. Bishop g5 takes away the c1 square, but looks a little too fancy. Not necessary. Could play a5. No real threat from white, but no, I want to play some move with a piece here rather than moving the pawns quite yet. Yeah, queen b3, bishop c1. I'm still trying to crack that somehow, but might not even be worth trying to. Knight f4 also I should strongly consider. Knight f4, white has to play queen d2 if they want to keep their queen in connection with the bishop. And then I'm thinking about playing bishop g5 after that. Actually, don't really see a good defense for him there. Yeah, let's do that. And if he plays queen f3 or queen e4, I can take e5 and then take h3 perhaps. Well, it depends on where his queen goes. If he goes to e4, bishop takes e5, he could take with the queen. Okay, so he does play here. And this is the move I was thinking of. Looks really annoying, especially when he has a minute 15. Threatens knight takes h3. And how does that queen stay in connection with the bishop? He could move his king, and then when I play knight takes h3 or knight takes g2 even, play f4, but must be losing. Just knight takes f4. Mass trades, I take on b2 at the end. My rook is also guarding f7. So that's a tactical point working in my favor. And he resigned. Okay. Let's pull up a analysis board and go through that. Okay. Let's flip this around. So we don't have access to the opening book on ICC, but I can add the engine in. E3, innocuous move. It's perfectly fine, but C4 is definitely the main line here. Queen's Gambit. Or sometimes you see knight F3. So as I said, when white plays something more laid back like this, I usually try to go for C5 because I try to turn it on its head. If white's not playing the Queen's Gambit and there's no pressure on my D5 pawn, I see no reason not to go for C5 myself because it's desirable generally to trade a wing pawn for a center pawn. So white plays B3. I'm not going to discuss this portion of the game that much. I don't think it's that critical. I was explaining why I played bishop F5, not fearing knight H4 business. Okay, I do think around here it starts to get a little more interesting. So rook C8, rook C1. And now I played a semi-waiting move, H6, just trying to play a useful move. And white played bishop D3, which feels like a weak move. And white spent considerable amount of time, over a minute in deciding to play that move. I actually thought C5 was more interesting here. C5, B6, knight A4. Something like that. Not even sure I want to play B6, actually, because B6 is all right. Let's say back here, if white plays C5 at this moment, I think B6 makes sense. There's no rook on C1. Maybe here white could even play knight A4, but when the rook does go to C1, let's see what the engine has to say about C5. Where is the engine? I can't even remember. Isn't it? Oh, yeah. Okay. There's a little tab I have to click. Whoa, Stockfish 5. We are rolling old school, guys. Stockfish 5. I think they're on 10 now. That's all right. My very first engine was Fritz 5.32, which I could probably beat right now. It was pretty weak, but that's that's what I used to analyze on back in the day. All right, so Stockfish 5 says, no worries. Here, let me move myself up a little bit so you guys can see this. Yeah, it says quarter pawn advantage for black after knight e4 in reply. It gives us semi-waiting move for white, rook e1 here. If white took on d5, I was tentatively thinking take with the knight to try to just play against the IQP and not take an IQP myself. Isolated queen's pawn. But again, you got to watch stuff like, can white force through d5 at some point? Probably not. White's probably going to run into pins on the file, but it's worth considering. Okay, so c5, the computer says just bring in the knight. What about b6? Yeah, b6 does leave me vulnerable to this. Maybe knight a4. Here too it says knight e4. Pressure converging on this point. Okay. Yeah, bishop d3 I really didn't like though, but the engine maybe thinks it's okay. Also knight h4. But the eval suggests that black's already totally fine here, which, you know, it really feels like it. This is a pretty harmless setup for white. And I have good development here. Light square bishop outside the chain. Everything working nicely. So, yeah, trade. And again, I was trying to hold off on this trade on c4 because let's say I were to do it at the first available opportunity. Maybe this queen comes here. You know how I was kind of annoying white? Queen b6, queen a5, queen coming to a6 even, as played in the game. I was a little worried white might do the same to me, especially with a queen b3 or queen a4 type move. So that's why I was happy when white played bishop d3, because I get to swap and take here. White's probably not going to take with a queen. They would have IQP, and they're moving right into this file situation. Yeah, and queen b6 looks like a decent move. Was also thinking queen a5, probably good as well, but then I started noticing that queen b6 actually might give white some more concrete issues. Gain a tempo on the bishop, and I'm trying to transfer this queen here. So bishop a1. Yeah, bishop's kind of removed from the action there. Because when you play a move like bishop a1, I mean, you're really just hoping to play d5 down the road, or you're hoping that there's some sort of clarification on this diagonal. In fairness, even if the bishop stays on b2, it'll be a similar situation, but it's pretty buried on a1. Yeah, and queen a6, okay. Top move from Stockfish 5. Love it. Here, and I mentioned knight b4 as well, but just trying to keep that in reserve for the time being. I wanted to transfer my queen to a6 anyway, so now knight b4 followed by taking on c4 as a threat. And to get a true evaluation, I'd want to use a stronger engine or keep this engine running. And by the way, Stockfish 5 would absolutely destroy me, let's be clear. But to get a real 2020 engine analysis of a position in a game like this, we need a stronger engine and give it a longer time to think. But for our purposes, just clicking through is fine. So queen a6, yeah, and I just didn't like white's position here. It seemed very fragile, and combined with the time situation, not a great scenario for white. Knight e5 briefly crossed my mind here. So knight e5, because that actually helps defend c4. I was thinking maybe take on e5 and then play rook fd8, gain a tempo on white's queen, then bring the knight back to d7, and maybe c4 could be loose. Although perhaps white has knight e4 there. I don't know. So I would be curious what the computer says about this move. It says just rook fd8. Okay, so this line I just mentioned, maybe not as strong for some reason. Even here, black has an edge. Knight b5, yeah, knight e4. Guess I can just take c4 there. Okay. And just to reiterate something I've said before in videos, I'm trying to use the engine purposefully here. I'm not just having it do all the heavy lifting for me. I'm trying to make up my mind about some lines on my own before adding in the engine. Yeah, I just don't like white's position. I mean, the computer didn't really indicate it at the time, but I think bishop d3 is a mistake. I'd want to keep pieces on board here as white, because if we're bound for that hanging pawn structure, keeping pieces on board should benefit the side with the hanging pawns. So I think I would probably play c5 here if I were white. Maybe something like rook e1, as the computer was saying, but c5 to me seems like the critical move. If white can slowly crawl forward on the queen side, they're making progress. Okay, but getting back to the game, queen a6. Yeah, d5 is also really interesting here. I thought I would have options against this move, like rook fd8 if I want to go for a pin. Although the computer points out queen b1 escaping the pin, and I assume due to tactics, I'm not going to be able to just win a pawn. Or maybe I will, but white has counterplay. So if I take twice here, let's say, take with the knight instead. Okay, so let's just say I'm greedy. It says queen e4. Okay, hit the rook. I guess there's rook takes c6 ideas if I move the rook and I'm not careful about the bishop. So white has, yeah, this runs into this. White has some play here, apparently. Ooh, yeah, gotta watch out. Loose pieces, mate threat. See that bishop on a1? Getting in the game here. Yeah, d5 would be interesting. But I also saw I could just take and trade everything on d5 because white can't take with the pawn. So they'd have to take with the queen. And undoubtedly, though, white would probably prefer this compared to the game because, again, the bishop is open. Even if the computer thinks that black has a bit of an edge here. I got to be careful. Maybe I tuck the bishop on f8 to guard g7. Slowly try to work against these weaknesses, but not until I've got all my bases covered. But my opponent played knight b5. Again, burned a lot of time for that decision. So going from 8 minutes down to below 6. And that's running into knight b4, and I think I pick up the a-pawn cleanly here. I didn't see a whole lot of issues. Queen e2 is the top move of the engine. I think I could take either way there. Not sure which way is preferable. Let's say I take with the queen after queen a2. Same idea. I'm just going for a trade. Should work. Yeah, queen takes a2. What about knight takes a2? That runs into rook c2, knight b4, rook d2, and thinks white has some compensation. Maybe because the queen is out of play here. Yeah, I probably would have gone for queen takes a2 there. But instead, after knight b4, white played queen b3. I take. Yeah, no need to play knight takes a2 here. This comes with tempo. I'm attacking the queen. If I pick up a pawn, I want to get the queens off the board. And key thing is that here, I'm attacking the rook. Knight takes a7 can be met by either rook a8 or knight takes c1, because if this sequence happens, I don't have to just take the knight back and allow white to play rook takes c1. I have an in-between move, check. Saving the knight and then grabbing here, and I'm up a piece. Plus, no, just a piece. So that's not working. Also, note that rook c2 after the trade. I can play knight b4, get the knight out with tempo on the rook, and then play a6 like I was saying, in c4, very likely to fall, I think. You know, knight c3 runs into rook takes c4. Guess white can play knight a3, but black's just up a clean pawn here. Queen's off the board, no danger. Winning for black. So my opponent tried to keep the queens on board. Computer says just take here. That's what I did. Yeah, I figured if white trades and takes a7, that knight was probably not coming back. So, as I said in the game, I think at this point it's just a matter of controlling the risk, converting cleanly, not getting too far behind on the clock, or really just trying to maintain some gap on the clock, not giving white hope there. I think I was maybe overanalyzing a little bit at this point, but I was just trying to be careful in a position that I knew was winning for black. Yeah, I'm happy with all these moves. I don't think there's a whole lot. Just trade. Rook c2 also given here. Yeah, I always thought bishop c1 might be the thing, but computer's unimpressed. Just says threaten this or threaten this, and knight e2. I think the solution I came up with, though, was pretty decent. Yeah, this white's relying on this queen to defend the bishop, and knight takes h3 or knight takes g2 coming. Pretty nasty. Yeah, I guess they could try to continue the game. I looked briefly at something like this. Maybe white can do this, but I noted that the rook defends the pawn on f7, so I can take on b2 at the end, just overwhelming. So, yeah, maybe queen e4 was the last try for white. Because I had mentioned that, you know, I was thinking about playing bishop takes e5, and then knight takes h3, and then take on b2 here. But probably in hindsight, I want to do this first, because bishop takes e5, white could take with the queen and pressure this. Although even here, yeah, knight d3 is a fork. So many ways to finish the job there, it seems. Okay. Computer fan yelling at me because Stockfish 5 was analyzing, so let's turn that off. Yeah, I'm happy with that game. I mean, white arguably made it easier for me by playing bishop d3, but I think this game is a good example of how to play against this hanging structure. So you really, if you're the side playing against those pawns, you want to try to attack them, hinder their movements, be mindful of a break, especially the center pawn breaking. So usually the d pawn. I was always trying to be aware of that. And I was just able to coordinate and create counterplay against those pawns quicker than white was able to muster up an attack against my king or open the position. So, yeah. Pretty technical game, but I'm happy with that nonetheless. All right, so thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. As always, again, you can subscribe to me or follow me on Twitch. I'm streaming quite a bit lately, but also still trying to post to YouTube. I consider YouTube to be more educational and Twitch to be maybe part educational, part entertainment. We have a lot of fun on the channel. So do check out the Twitch channel if you're interested. But hope you guys enjoyed this game, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane a little bit as well for you old timers on this channel with the Internet Chess Club. All right, bye guys.